The world I once knew fell under me at 15. Like an aged picture frame damaged, but still holding on, my family had always been broken. One fateful evening, my stepfather, a harsh man with little patience or warmth to give, decided I was not welcome in our house any longer. The dispute was blown over something small, but his sharp comments struck deep, and I felt the earth closing in around me as he stood boldly in the entrance. Seated on the couch, my mother merely observed. Her eyes showed a mix of terror and helplessness. She chose silence over defense. Standing on the brink of the street, my weary backpack hanging over my shoulder, the weight of sadness weighed more than ever. It was dark outside, and the cool wind swept through my hair, a sharp contrast to the warmth of the house I had just lost. My circumstances started to feel real. I was now without direction and barely with a few dollars in my pocket. The streets were brutal, and my little experience would help me to withstand the hardship awaiting me. As I meandered the empty streets during the day, hiding in shadows at night, the following weeks seemed like months. Once bright, my spirit started to darken and slowly give in to the burden of despair. The city, one I had known for years, became a stranger's domain full of difficulties I couldn't understand. I searched trash for scraps of food and sought sanctuary in the tiny corners of structures, where I could curl up and try to forget the biting hunger that tormented me. I searched for employment, but every place I applied rejected me. Too young, they remarked. Alternatively, we would not hire youngsters. As though my desperation didn't show my desire to work, to make even a few pennies in trade for a slice of moldy bread. For neighbors who would rather ignore my evident difficulty, I accepted tiny tasks like washing cars or mowing grass. Though it kept me alive, the salary was a pittance, barely enough to fill my stomach. As days stretched into weeks, I discovered how to negotiate this unfamiliar environment where compassion was scarce. I encountered others like me, teenagers running from violence, homes torn by financial misery. Sharing whatever few resources we could gather, we built temporary settlements. Over common meals and storytelling, we developed ties, each story a thread in the tapestry of our shared experience sewn together by survival. An old baker by the name of Mr. Novak noticed me one frosty morning as I was searching around the rear of a small bakery. He stopped today, but he had previously seen me, a ghosted kid, hanging about. With kind eyes peeking out from under flour-dusted glasses, he inquired, "Are you hungry, lad?" He gave me a heated pastry before I could answer, and I ate it hungrily. Mr. Novak came to be rather friendly with me over the next few weeks. He started teaching me how to bake. I would assist him in forming loaves and kneading the dough. The smell of warm, freshly baked bread, the opposite of the frigid, merciless streets where I had passed my nights, delighted me. Gradually, he presented me with a part-time position and, with it, a guarantee of income enough to keep me fed. He finally even gave me a little corner in the bakery where I could rest at night. Though I was concerned that kindness would come at a price, Mr. Novak's honesty swiftly calmed my anxiety and prevented me from accepting it. Though it was a temporary one, I was relieved to finally have a consistent place to call home. I bloomed in the bakery. I discovered the magic of yeast, the rhythm of the oven's heat, and the complexity of dough day in and day out. Once calloused from street life, my hands became adept at bread and pastry design and creation. Creation filled a vacuum I had assumed would never be filled. My confidence grew. I started to see myself as something more rather than only a youngster fleeing a miserable past. I built a committed clientele over time. The locals of the area started to look for my pastries and were lined up daily to grab the first whiff of the day's baked goods. The community embraced me warmly, giving me the impression I believed I had lost permanently. Under Mr. Novak's direction and with my relentless will, I started creating my own recipes, including original variations relevant to our varied clientele. As I started to save money, the financial strain gradually lessened. I first began to dream of one day starting my own bakery. Then I learned about budgeting and how to prepare for future costs. Life was changing, and I started to feel fulfillment start to blossom inside of me. The years passed by. I stayed at the bakery as years passed and finally assumed control when Mr. Novak chose to retire. I kept honing my craft by trying out combinations and ingredients. Knowing that I had literally reconstructed my life bit by bit made me proud. Through diligence and perseverance, I had done so. The bakery became a treat in our town after 10 years of committed work. Once a small business, the once small establishment now bustled with energy, attracting residents and visitors both eager to sample the products of a place of hardship. My hobby had turned into a successful company. Success had charted a different road for me, one that let me get over the suffering of my past. Life seemed bright. Hope supplanted gloom. The bakery was a haven where I could freely converse, not simply a company. Every pastry had a piece of my trip, every loaf of bread a narrative. Still, behind all this advancement, the weight of my prior life remained as a reminder of where I had come. An unwanted reunion. One fateful evening, while I was winding down from a hectic day at the bakery, the doorbell rang. Opening the door to find my mother there, her face darkened by years apart, my heart sank. That was the first time I had seen her in almost 10 years. The years had been unkind. She appeared older than I recalled. My half-siblings were behind her, faces I hardly knew. Their eyes showed an urgency, an expectation that I should be glad to see them, yet they seemed to be about the same age I had been when I was tossed out. The event seemed dreamlike. The past, which had so brutally returned into my life, felt as though it overshadowed the warmth of my successes. "Can we talk?" my mother asked, a nervous cry infused with desperation. I paused, my past crashing like waves against the beach of my recent equilibrium. Standing there timelessly frozen, my thoughts raced with flashes of neglect and abandonment. In a world where I had been treated kindly, this homecoming risked tearing apart the tapestry I had painstakingly created over years. Facing the past, I led them in, my heart a storm of uncertainty. The bakery filling with the warmth of the evening. They sat awkwardly at the small dining space. Casual chat fast turned into a direct request for money. They said they were struggling, that life had been tough. My mother seemed tired and beaten. My siblings' faces reflected a terrible hope that I would help to relieve their pain. The pain of betrayal churned inside me, a seething fury I had never really dealt with. I opened my mouth to speak, each word tinged with the anguish I had buried. "You threw me out. You selected silence when I needed you most. You come seeking assistance now?" My mother prepared for my outburst. My brothers' young faces mirrored uncertainty. Their eyes opened in shock. My rage was fighting against the facade of family ties that had long since rusted and fallen apart, while the desire to assist was gnawing away at my anger. I said, the words flowing like a dam breaking, "I built my life from the ashes of your decisions. I recall hiding from every shadow since I was terrified and sleeping in alleyways." Tears came to my mother's eyes, but I felt too far gone to empathize with her. "You made that possible with your indifference." The moments dragged like an eternity, and I saw them move uncomfortably in their seats. They sought forgiveness, but I lacked the capacity to bestow upon them the grace they sought, merely for their own survival, as though my own success owed them anything. Yelling, I felt caught between the child who had suffered and the guy who had battled to escape his anguish. "You cannot come here and act as if nothing had happened." I murmured at last, the rage going away and only tiredness remaining behind. "You need to leave." It felt as though a weight was lifting off, but the pain stayed, whirling about. As they stood, weighed by my choice, they did not fight. I could at last start to heal from the cut that had long since festered. I was surrounded by the bakery's silence once they departed. I couldn't quite get rid of the underlying sense of betrayal that bubbled under the surface. Fear and survival no longer controlled my life. It had grown into something priceless. Still, my past shadows remained, and the familiar pain of family nagged me. I decided to ponder instead of sink in grief as the days stretched into weeks. Rather than retreat into hopelessness, I directed my passion toward my work. I worked on expanding my menu, contacting nearby vendors, and developing my brand. Just as I started a program in the neighborhood for at-risk youngsters, giving them chances to learn baking skills and transform their lives. And gradually, over time, the agony started to become inspiration. Although my family had abandoned me, I realized I could build a family of my own inside the bakery. My link with my clients strengthened, and the pals I nurtured blossomed into something lovely, evidence of the free power I had developed. Finding serenity. Years later, when I was standing in my busy bakery, I suddenly felt great tranquility come over me. The walls had seen many tales, smiles, and laughter. Though I was amazed at how far I had come, I never forgot the path that had molded me. Though it was part of my identity, I had decided not to let my past define most of my life. Strangely free, I was when I learned a few years later of my stepfather's death. One felt no grief for a relationship that had already been cut off. I welcomed the future, one with fresh possibilities instead. I came to see at last that family could be defined not by blood, but by love, support, and connection created through common experiences. My bakery was now my house, not just a workplace. Ultimately, what I had created was much more than simply a bakery. It was a refuge for people like me who had experienced hardship and come out strong. Every day, I appreciated the kindness extended to me by Mr. Novak and others who assisted along the road. Though the battle had been brutal, it had also been beautiful in its hardness. Surrounded by the smell of just-baked bread and the warm glow of the bakery lights, I knew I was where I was meant to be. By converting suffering into an objective, I had developed a life full of significance, a life where every pastry made and every dough kneaded reflected the tale of survival that had brought me here.